isn't right. We need to be careful with what we're eating here. What do you mean? Is something wrong with the food?
The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the San Francisco Chinatown street. Linda Lee walked hand in hand with 4-year-old Brandon, her grocery bag swinging gently as they headed home. She didn't notice the two men following them. She didn't see the cruel smirks on their faces. But Bruce Lee did. From across the street, Bruce watched as the larger man, a notorious street fighter named Jack the Hammer Morrison, stepped directly into Linda's path. His companion, a former boxer called Tommy Knuckles Chun, blocked her from behind. They had been drinking. They had been talking. And they had made a terrible mistake. They decided to prove themselves by humiliating the family of the Chinese movie star. What happened next would become legend in the martial arts world. 10 seconds. That's all it took for Bruce Lee to remind two foolish men why respect matters more than reputation. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss stories of justice and respect. Now let's see how this unfolded. The characters. Bruce Lee wasn't just a movie star in 1972. He was a devoted husband, a protective father, and a martial artist who had spent his entire life mastering the philosophy that fighting was the last resort, not the first choice. He had opened his martial arts school in Oakland, taught students of all backgrounds, and was working on films that would change cinema forever. Linda Lee was his wife, a strong woman who had stood by Bruce through years of struggle and discrimination in Hollywood. She understood the challenges they faced as an interracial couple in 1970s America. She had learned to ignore the stares, the whispers, and the occasional harassment. But today would be different. Brandon Lee, only 4 years old, was too young to understand why some people looked at his family with hatred. He just wanted to get home and play with his toys. Jack Morrison was a different kind of man entirely. At 6 feet 2 inches and 230 pounds, he had made a name for himself in San Francisco's underground fighting scene. He had beaten men in bar fights, street brawls, and illegal boxing matches. He thought his size and strength made him untouchable. He thought wrong. Tommy Chun was Morrison's shadow, smaller, faster, but equally arrogant. A former Golden Gloves boxer who had been banned from professional competition for excessive violence, he now made his living as an enforcer for local criminals. Together, they were known as the Chinatown Terrors, men who took pleasure in intimidating others. The conflict begins. The trouble had been brewing for weeks. Morrison and Chun had been drinking at the Golden Dragon Bar when someone mentioned that Bruce Lee, that Chinese actor who thinks he's tough, lived nearby. Morrison, his judgment clouded by alcohol and ego, saw an opportunity. "I could take him easy," Morrison boasted to the crowd. "Movie fighting ain't real fighting. I'll prove it." Chun laughed. "Why fight him? Let's mess with his family. Show him he's not so special in our neighborhood." It was a plan born of stupidity and cruelty. They didn't know that Bruce Lee had been watching them follow his family. They didn't know that he had already assessed the situation, calculated the threat, and positioned himself to protect those he loved. Linda noticed them first when Morrison deliberately bumped into her, sending her groceries spilling across the sidewalk. Apples rolled into the gutter. Rice scattered across the pavement. "Watch where you're going, lady," Morrison sneered, his breath reeking of whiskey. Little Brandon clutched his mother's hand tighter, sensing danger in the way children instinctively do. Chun circled behind them, cutting off their escape route. "What's the matter? Your movie star husband too busy to walk you home? Or is he too scared to show his face in a real neighborhood?" Linda's heart raced. She looked around for help, but the street had suddenly emptied. People in Chinatown had learned not to interfere with Morrison and Chan. They brought nothing but trouble. "Please," Linda said, her voice steady despite her fear. "We don't want any problems. Just let us pass." Morrison stepped closer, his shadow falling over Brandon. "Maybe we don't want to let you pass. Maybe we want to teach your husband a lesson about respect." That's when Bruce Lee crossed the street. The confrontation escalates. Bruce moved with the calm precision of a man who had faced danger countless times. No wasted steps. No unnecessary gestures. Just purposeful, controlled movement that spoke of absolute confidence. "Gentlemen," Bruce said quietly, his voice carrying despite its softness, "I believe my wife asked you to let her pass." Morrison turned, a cruel smile spreading across his face. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Well, well. The movie star shows up. What are you going to do, Lee? Show us some of your fake Hollywood moves. Chun laughed, bouncing on his toes like he was entering a boxing ring. We've been waiting for this. You think you're tough because you can do some fancy kicks for the camera? Let's see how you handle real fighters. Bruce gently guided Linda and Brandon behind him. Linda, take Brandon and go home. I'll be there in a moment. Bruce, Linda started. Go. Now. His voice remained calm, but Linda heard the edge of steel beneath the words. She gathered Brandon and their scattered groceries, moving quickly toward their apartment while glancing back with worry. Morrison cracked his knuckles loudly. Running away? Smart woman. She doesn't want to see what's about to happen to her husband. A small crowd had begun to gather at a safe distance. Word spread quickly in Chinatown when violence was brewing. People watched from windows, doorways, and across the street. Some hoped to see the famous Bruce Lee in action. Others feared they were about to witness his humiliation or worse. Chun moved first, throwing a boxer's jab aimed at Bruce's face. It was fast practice, the kind of punch that had knocked out dozens of opponents in the ring and on the street. Bruce didn't block it. He simply wasn't there when the punch arrived. He had shifted his weight, moved his head precisely 3 inches to the left, and Chen's fist cut through empty air. Before Chun could recover, Bruce's hand had moved in a blur, striking 3 pressure points on Chen's arm in rapid succession. Chen's entire right side went numb. His arm dr. His side, nerves screaming in confusion. What the? Chun staggered back, trying to raise his arm and failing. Morrison charged in, using his size advantage to attempt a tackle that would have crushed a smaller man. But Bruce was no ordinary man. Using Morrison's momentum against him, Bruce stepped aside at the last possible second and guided Morrison's charge into the brick wall of the building behind him. The impact made a sickening thud. Morrison's shoulder hit the wall with enough force to crack the mortar. You little! Morrison spun around, throwing a wild haymaker. Bruce ducked under the punch and delivered a lightning-fast strike to Morrison's solar plexus. The bigger man's breath exploded from his lungs. His eyes went wide with shock. He had been hit before many times, but never like this. The pain was unlike anything he had experienced. Chun recovered enough to attempt a desperate kick with his left leg. Bruce caught the kick midair, twisted Chen's ankle just enough to send him spinning off balance, and released him. Chun crashed to the ground, landing hard on the concrete. The crowd watching from safe distances gasped. 3 seconds had passed. Both attackers were already hurt, confused, and beginning to understand they had made a terrible mistake. Morrison, still struggling to breathe, backed against the wall. You got lucky, Lee. Let's see you handle both of us at once. It was the last act of bravado from a man who had run out of options. The 10-second resolution. What happened in the next 10 seconds would be analyzed by martial artists for decades to come. Security camera footage from a nearby store would capture it, though the quality was poor and the action almost too fast to follow. Morrison and Chun attacked simultaneously from different angles, hoping to overwhelm Bruce with numbers. It was their final mistake. Bruce's response was a masterclass in efficiency. No wasted motion. No excess energy. Just pure devastating precision. Chun came in low, attempting a tackle. Bruce's knee rose to meet Chen's face with calculated force. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough to end the threat immediately. Chen's nose exploded in a spray of blood, and he crumpled to the ground unconscious. In the same fluid motion, Bruce spun to face Morrison, who was throwing a desperate right hook. Bruce intercepted the punch with his left hand, redirected its energy, and delivered a palm strike to Morrison's chest that sent the bigger man stumbling backward 3 steps. Morrison tried to recover his balance, throwing a wild left punch. Bruce caught the wrist, applied pressure to a nerve cluster, and Morrison's entire arm went numb. The big man's eyes widened in panic and pain. Enough, Bruce said quietly. But Morrison, pride overcoming sense, tried one last desperate lunge. Bruce ended it with a single strike. A 1-inch punch delivered with perfect technique to Morrison's sternum. Despite the minimal distance, the power was devastating. Morrison's feet actually left the ground. He flew backward and landed flat on his back, the air knocked completely from his lungs. 10 seconds. 2 men defeated. Not killed, not permanently injured, but thoroughly, completely, and publicly humiliated. Bruce stood over Morrison, not breathing heavily, not showing any sign of exertion. When you wake up tomorrow, you will remember this moment. You will remember that strength without discipline is weakness, size without skill is vulnerability, and arrogance without wisdom is always punished. Morrison could only groan in response. The witness, an old man, stepped forward from the crowd. Master Wong was a respected Tai Chi teacher who had known Bruce since his early days in San Francisco. Everyone here saw what happened, Master Wong announced loudly in Chinese and English. These two fools attacked Bruce Lee's family. Bruce Lee defended his wife and child with honor and restraint. He could have killed them but chose mercy. The crowd murmured in agreement. Several people nodded. The story would spread through Chinatown within hours, then throughout San Francisco, then across the martial arts community worldwide. The police arrived minutes later, called by a shopkeeper who had witnessed the entire confrontation. The officer in charge was Sergeant Mike Patterson, who knew Bruce from previous community events. "What happened here, Bruce?" Patterson asked, though the scene told the story clearly enough. "These men threatened my family," Bruce explained calmly. "I defended them using minimal necessary force." Master Wong and approximately 30 witnesses can confirm the sequence of events. Patterson looked at Morrison and Chan, both still lying on the ground in varying states of consciousness and regret. "Looks like they picked the wrong family to mess with. Gentlemen, you're both under arrest for assault and public intoxication." As the ambulance arrived to check on the two defeated fighters, Bruce turned and walked home to his family. Linda was waiting at the window with Brandon. When Bruce entered their apartment, she rushed to embrace him. "Are you okay?" she asked, checking him for injuries. "I'm fine," Bruce assured her, kneeling to meet Brandon's worried eyes. "Remember what I always tell you, Brandon. Fighting is not about hurting people. It's about protecting those you love and standing up for what's right." Those men learned an important lesson today. Brandon hugged his father tightly. "You were really fast, Dad." Bruce smiled. "Fast enough." The aftermath. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Local newspapers ran headlines. Martial arts legend defends family in street confrontation. The Chinese language press praised Bruce Lee's restraint and honor. The martial arts community debated the technical aspects of what witnesses had described. Morrison and Chan faced criminal charges for assault and were banned from every legitimate fighting venue in California. But their real punishment was far more severe. They became cautionary tales. The story of how they attacked Bruce Lee's family and were defeated in 10 seconds followed them for the rest of their lives. Morrison eventually apologized publicly, admitting that alcohol and arrogance had led him to make the worst decision of his life. He quit drinking, took up legitimate martial arts training, and spent years trying to live down his moment of stupidity. Chan disappeared from the fighting scene entirely, too humiliated to continue his career as an enforcer. Some said he moved to another state to start over. Bruce Lee never spoke publicly about the incident in detail. When reporters asked, he simply said, "I did what any father and husband would do. I protected my family. That's all that matters." But privately, he used the experience as a teaching moment for his students. "Those men made several critical mistakes," he would explain in his Oakland school. "They let pride overcome wisdom. They confused movie fighting with real martial arts. They thought size and reputation were more important than skill and discipline." He would pause, meeting the eyes of his students. "The greatest victory is the fight you prevent through wisdom. But when you must fight, fight with purpose, not anger. Fight to protect, not to harm. Fight to end the conflict, not to prove your ego." The universal truth. This story became legendary not because Bruce Lee won a fight. He had won countless training matches and demonstrations. It became legendary because it perfectly illustrated the principles he had spent his life teaching. Respect is earned through character, not through intimidation. True strength comes from discipline, not aggression. The wise warrior avoids conflict when possible but responds with devastating efficiency when necessary. Your reputation means nothing if your actions lack honor. Years later, Brandon Lee would tell interviewers that this incident taught him more about his father than any movie or martial arts demonstration. He didn't want to fight those men. He gave them every chance to walk away. But when they threatened his family, he responded with perfect control. Not too much force, not too little. Just exactly what the situation required. Linda Lee would add, "That's who Bruce was. Calm in crisis. Controlled in chaos. He lived his philosophy every day. Not just in the training hall." Master Wong, who witnessed the entire confrontation, would say in his final interview before passing away, "In my 70 years of studying martial arts, I never saw anything as beautiful as Bruce Lee's restraint that day. He could have destroyed those men. Instead, he taught them. That is the mark of a true master. The final wisdom." The streets of Chinatown never saw Morrison or Chen again, but they became eternal reminders of a simple truth. Never threaten someone's family unless you're prepared to face the consequences. Bruce Lee understood something that many fighters never learn. Violence is not about dominance. It's about protection. It's not about proving superiority. It's about defending what matters. 10 seconds to end a confrontation. A lifetime to build the wisdom that made those 10 seconds possible. If this story inspired you to think about the true meaning of strength and respect, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. We bring you real stories of justice, honor, and lessons that matter. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed someone defending their family with wisdom and restraint? Your story might inspire our next video. And here's a challenge. Watch this video again and see if you can spot the 3 specific martial arts principles Bruce Lee demonstrated during those 10 seconds. Comment below with your answer. The story of Bruce Lee defending his family reminds us that true power isn't about size or aggression. It's about discipline, wisdom, and the courage to protect those you love. In a world that often confuses violence with strength, Bruce Lee showed us the difference between a fighter and a warrior.